So apparently Nintendo is banning users for using a very specific accessory on their Nintendo Switch 2. What's up guys, Nintendo Jab here, back with a brand new video. And yeah, apparently Nintendo is cracking down on users that are specifically using a non-authorized device called the MIG Switch. For those of you that don't know what this device is, it's pretty much just like an R4 card from the DS era. Like you can essentially think of it as like a fake Nintendo Switch game cartridge that allows you to put in an SD card in there, and then with that you can play backups of Nintendo Switch games. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what this device is, the MIG Switch. When it comes to what it's usually used for, I think most people would probably say that they use it for non-piracy related reasons. Basically people who have a large physical game collection, they basically want to back up all of their physical games onto one single cartridge. That way they don't have to keep swapping in a different game every time they want to switch games and stuff, which I guess is a legitimate use for something like the MIG Switch. However, this is also a tool for piracy. People can easily just download backups of Nintendo Switch games, load it onto the MIG Switch, and then just play games for free, which is obviously going to make Nintendo pretty unhappy. So from my understanding, the MIG Switch wasn't initially working on Nintendo Switch 2. There needed to be like an update to actually allow it to be used to play Switch 1 backups on the Switch 2, and ever since that, people have gone ahead and tried to use the MIG Switch on their Nintendo Switch 2, and they've been greeted with a message that basically says that Nintendo has banned them from online services. Now, it's very important to make this 100% clear, because I know that there might be some misinformation in regards to this and all that. No, this is not a hardware ban in the sense that the Switch 2 is just a brick now. This is basically just banning that Nintendo Switch 2 from accessing online services. It can still play games offline. However, obviously, the Switch 2 is basically going to be, you know, it's not essentially a paperweight, but it's kind of nerfed in what it can do, because now it can't use online because you were trying to use the MIG Switch. Again, it can still be played offline, it can still play physical games and stuff like that, but obviously it can't access Nintendo services anymore. Now, some people have been commenting on this, basically saying that Nintendo's going too far and that there are legitimate use cases for the MIG Switch or other products like it, and that banning people from online services for using it is kind of dumb. However, you have to remember that with these non-authorized third-party tools like the MIG Switch, you know, there always comes the risk of a ban. There always comes the risk of your account potentially, you know, getting flagged for using something that Nintendo clearly does not authorize. I can understand how a physical game collector that you know, wants to back up their own games and just have everything on one cart, maybe they don't want to carry around 10 or 20 different games in their Switch 2 case or whatever it is, right? I can understand why they could see the MIG Switch as a really useful tool, but at the end of the day, it's also one of the easiest and best tools for pirates to just basically steal games, and that's obviously why Nintendo does not want anyone to use it regardless of what it is being used for. But yeah, that's pretty much the situation so far. It seems like things like the MIG Switch, I think there's another one too that's very similar called like the R4 card. It seems like, you know, devices like that are obviously not going to be authorized by Nintendo. They're not made by Nintendo, they're not sold by Nintendo, so naturally they wouldn't necessarily support it, and so it's just not worth trying to use those things on your Nintendo Switch 2 unless you are perfectly okay with potentially getting your account banned or even your Switch 2 banned, which obviously does really suck. But yeah, that's pretty much the situation. Super crazy, honestly, but at the end of the day, I'm not even that surprised. Obviously, Nintendo is taking a very hard stance on like anti-piracy in regards to, you know, emulators, in regards to obviously things now like the MIG Switch, you know, updating that EULA with the whole, you know, language surrounding like whether or not they can ban your entire console or brick your entire console, I should say. Obviously, Nintendo is taking a very like anti-piracy stance with the Switch 2. So naturally, something like this, a tool that could potentially open up the doors to piracy, obviously they were not going to support it, and you know, it just kind of, it is what it is. It sucks for the people that had to find out the hard way that their Nintendo Switch 2s are essentially banned forever now from accessing online services. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to risk your Nintendo consoles or anything like that, just don't do anything unauthorized with them. You know, unless you're willing to accept the potential consequences, which is of course a ban. But yeah, that's the situation. Let me know what you guys think though down in the comments below. Do you guys think Nintendo's going a little crazy with the whole MIG Switch banning people thing? Do you think, you know, this is kind of a little too much for them? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But with all of that being said though, guys, thank you for watching the video. Subscribe if you haven't. We're getting super close to our first 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, guys, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.